Hello students, today we'll be looking at the labor market and the labor force statistics, including the unemployment rate. So the labor force statistics are collected by the same government agency as collects the GDP and inflation data usually. So that's the National Bureau of Statistics in China, and in the HKSAR is the Census and Statistics Department. Now in the US it's unusual in that the labor force statistics are collected by the Bureau of Labor Statistics that only collects labor force statistics. So how do they collect how do they generate these labor force statistics? It's based on a survey of households. So they call up these households and they ask them questions about the people in the household, how many people in your household, how many of them are of working age. So the labor force statistics are based on people who are working age. In mainland China in HKSAR, that's 15 to 60 because we have 9 years of compulsory education and the retirement age in 60. Now in the US, it's slightly different. It's compulsory education till 16 and then retirement age is 65. So their working age is slightly different. Then they ask them about these working age people. Certain questions like were you paid for work? If you weren't paid for work, were you looking for a job? And based on the answers to these questions, people are divided into these three groups. So if you answered yes to the question, were you paid for work? Then you're put into the group employed. This will include people who are not necessarily paid for their work, but they were working in a family business. So you're working in your family restaurant, you're not necessarily paid directly, but the profits from the restaurant support everyone, then you're considered employed. This includes also people who are only working very few hours a week. Maybe you only worked 2 hours last week. You're still considered employed as long as you are paid for work. Now, if the answer to were you paid for work is no, then they'll ask this person, did they actively look for a job in the last month? Did they look at the newspaper for a job? Did they go to a business and ask, do you have any jobs available? Did they interview? Any action taken to look for a job? If the answer to that is yes, then you're considered unemployed. If the answer is that no, then you're considered not in labor force. So no to the answer to the question, were you paid for work? No to the question, did you look for a job? Then you're not in labor force. And this will include people like students, housewives, people who've taken early retirement, people who are just on a long vacation, decided not to work for the next year or so. So that's everyone who's not working and not looking for a job. Labor force would be people who are working or have looked for work, and that's the total number of workers in the society. So this is how our population is divided up. Firstly, we have the young people until age 15, and then we have the retired people over age 60, and everyone in between. That's a working age population. And this working age is divided into employed, unemployed, and not in labor force. And our labor force statistics are based on this working age population. It's how this is divided up. First thing we calculate would be the unemployment rate, and the unemployment rate would be the number of people unemployed divided by the people employed plus unemployed. That is divided by the labor force. And another important statistic that we calculate is the labor force participation rate. That is the percentage of the working age population who are in the labor force. So that would be the employed plus unemployed divided by the total working age population. So this is the labor force statistics from China for the last 30 years or so. And the top line in blue, that's the total labor force. You can see it's been increasing for most of the period, but sometime in the mid-2010s, it started to decrease. And I'll talk about that later in this lecture about how the shrinking of the labor force could be problematic. And this is the unemployment rate. You see it went up sometime in the early 2000s. That's because the state-owned enterprises became less important and private enterprises became more important in the economy. And so the unemployment rate went up a bit because of the state-owned enterprises, which used to employ everyone, became less important. Now, um, these are the official labor force statistics. The unemployment rate is a little bit problematic. Economists have actually looked at the unemployment rate in China, and they find that this official statistics, well, firstly, it's too smooth. The unemployment rate shouldn't look so smooth. And secondly, it's a bit too low. The actual unemployment rate, which they estimate from other sources, they find that the actual unemployment rate is actually much more variable and it's a little bit higher. Now, this is the labor force statistics from HKSAR. And you can see that when you look at the unemployment rate, it's actually much more variable. See, jumping up like this. There was a spike during the Asian economic crisis, and later there was a housing market crash. And then this is from the global financial crisis there. So let's try out how we calculate the labor force statistics. This is using numbers from the US. To calculate the unemployment rate, we take the number of unemployed here, then we take employed plus unemployed to give us labor force, and we divide number of unemployed by number in the labor force. Then for the labor force participation rate, we take employed plus unemployed plus non in labor force, gives us 232.6. That's the total adult population. Then we take the labor force and we divide by the adult population to give us the labor force participation rate. So here's an example, another example. I'd like you to try it out now, just so that you remember the way we calculate the labor force statistics.